I am wonderful. Merry Christmas to you.
And to you, thanks.
What can I help you with?
Yeah, well, basically, I'm just wanting to know what your opinion is on the whole trust thing of how to take that leap of faith from being a one-man band business owner to actually beginning to hire people. And how do you actually go about doing that in faith as well, not just practically, but also in faith, trusting that the Lord will actually provide for you to be able to pay those people?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it's probably the hardest stage of any business is to go from, a solo operator to 1, 2, and 3 staff. So credit to you for even going through that stage. What I don't like about what you said is the faith step, like for the Lord to provide.
Yeah.
To me, that's just not a good model. It's kind of blackmail. We're kind of saying to the Lord, listen, I'm going to employ someone. You better bring the money in for me to pay them. So I'm just really not a fan. To me, I think the Lord's got better things to do than worry about that, right? So for me, I mean, of course, He blesses us all day, every day, but I would rather put a practical strategy around that works for me, right? Rather than, to me, it kind of feels like we're abdicating a little bit. That's how it feels to me. So remember, though, that you don't have to go from no staff to a full-time staff member, right? There are some middle ground that you can go through that I think are quite exciting. Because, depending on your industry, a full-time staff member might be 40 grand a year, 50 grand, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, depending on what you're doing, right? And so that's a really big jump. And like I've said before, I think you can afford to make the jump on a staff member when you can afford 75% of their wages. Or you basically just have a look at how long is it going to take this person to be self-sufficient. So if that's 1 month, then I would make sure I have 2 months worth of buffer. If that's 2 months for them to become self-sufficient, I would have 3 months worth of wages set aside so that I'm taking the pressure off a little bit, right? But I wouldn't employ someone when I don't have the customers coming in the door and I don't have the cash to pay them. That's just a recipe for disaster. So in the short term, depending on the kind of tasks that you want done, you could possibly go to the global workforce, right? Like Upwork, UPWORK, Upwork.com, and post jobs and get people to help you with that stuff. And they're going to be anywhere around the world from $5 an hour to 500, depending on what you want done. But you're paying for an outcome, right? So you don't have the commitment of a full-time wage. So you might say, listen, instead of employing an admin person in Australia, you might say, I'm going to get my admin tasks done offshore, and it'll probably cost you a quarter of the price of having it done in Australia. So that's one option. You can get interns. You can have interns that come and work in your business, and the trade-off is that you're going to train them because they're green. Or you could find a subcontractor, right? Like the amount of people that are doing their own books is madness to me. Because you can bring in a bookkeeper at between $60 and $80 an hour or something, and they'll do it for you and they'll do it faster. So what that does is if you're outsourcing or if you've got a subcontractor or a part-time person, what that allows you to do is get some of your time back, which means you can put that time.
That's right.
You can put that time onto high-level tasks, right? Which means now you've got more money. So to me, that's a natural progression to a full-time staff member, right? You can play in that space. Here's another group that I think get completely overlooked, right? So stay-at-home mums that are re-entering the workforce. This group, I think, are amazing because they obviously have kids. They spend however many years raising kids. Now they've got to get back in the workforce. They're usually overqualified for the jobs they can get. So they'll really appreciate getting a head start, right? They'll appreciate a job. They're insanely loyal, and you can normally get a better skill set than what you have to pay because their skills might be 5 years old or 10 years old, so they're prepared to work at a lower level. So that group there, they'll happily work 3 days a week from 9 till 2 because they want to do the school run either end. So that person there, for example, it doesn't have to be a mum, but it's typically a mum, right? Still only mums are having kids, despite what the media will tell you. That group of people right there, they it's only going to cost you 20 grand to have them working for you all year because they don't work full-time hours. And so they can really help you out. And that person could just be there for 6 months to build your business to the point where you can afford a full-time staff member and then you're away. To me, if you can't make the jump, we've got to hack it. We've got to hack at the process because it's not okay to stay where you are.
Right.
You don't want to stay where you are. If you can't afford the jump, what's the middle ground that you want to hack through? And there's just a few ideas that you could use for that.
That is awesome. Thank you. So would you say you would have some form of a budget kept aside for the initial first months to ensure that you could pay those hours?
Yep.
Would that be wise to obviously have that cash available?
100%.
In order to pay the person, hey.
Let me give you
So
the
not
nuances.
pay as you go. Yeah.
Let me give you the nuances, right? For example, if you were employing an electrician, right? An electrician is probably a self-starter and will probably bring in more money than they actually cost by the end of week 2. So that person's got a very short run cycle between when they start and when they're profitable. But let's say you brought in an architect that needed to be trained for 2 months on your internal systems before they could ever go on a job. Well, you need to be able to cash flow 3 to 4 months of their wages before they start bringing in more than they cost. So it's just about looking at how quickly can you recover the overhead and then making sure you've got more wages set aside than that time.